But let's start with the tariff situation. Now you've got China saying they're going to put 125% tariffs on America. They're not backing down. They say they're reaching out to the EU to work against the American bully. This is getting worse and worse, and the markets are on a roller coaster ride. Michael Shure, what do you think?
Again, when it comes to finance, that's not my area of expertise, but it does certainly seem that retaliatory tariffs are just that. And if that is what China chooses to do, they're well within, I would guess, their rights to do that. What creates the interesting dynamic here is the second part of what you said, Kim, which is that there are alliances being formed against the United States over this, something that U.S. presidents have tried to avoid at many turns throughout history. Now, during periods of war, they've stumbled upon it. For moments, there have been problems, especially when it comes to bringing militaries together for foreign interests, when it is not a land threat to some of those countries. But this is unprecedented. When you have countries going to China, when you have countries that are ordinarily allies of the United States saying, we can't work with this guy, so we've got to come up with our plan B. And hey, you know what? This plan B thing might even be better than what we had before. So we can thank Trump for doing that. And I think you're seeing that in places like France and Great Britain. You're certainly seeing it in Canada. And that's what becomes problematic politically. And that's the oversight here, the massive oversight.
We also have Democrats now looking at posts that Trump made about possible market manipulation related to tariffs, wondering if they are profiting off of this. Jim Avila, have you been looking at this? And what do you think? Is there going to be an investigation, or are they just running their lips and talking about possible market manipulation, but nothing will come of it?
I'm not sure anything's going to come of it. Trump controls the Department of Justice, and he controls the Congress. So, I mean, there may be some noise about it, but I don't think anything will come of it. It is interesting that people. I was with an Uber driver yesterday who said this is all about making billionaires more money by exactly what you're talking about. The president signaling that they should buy stocks again just before he took the tariffs off of most countries. So that's out there in the public, and I think it's another thing that is that kind of hits at the credibility of Donald Trump, which is building, and his approval ratings are going way down. I also agree with everything Michael's saying about the alliances being put in trouble. When the dollar, if some of these countries stop using the dollar as their currency to trade in among each other, that's a real problem for the United States. Also, the problem with tariffs is it costs us money.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the stuff that we buy at Walmart and other low-cost clothing places comes from China. And they're warning us that prices are going to be much higher, 125% higher. So these tariffs are not doing anybody any good. It's not certainly helping the American public. It's not coming into our pockets. The tariff situation, the trade war is not a good thing. Donald Trump started it. It's on his back, and he realized that and pulled back from most of the tariffs, except for against China, because he realized it was really hurting his credibility and hurting what the American public thought of his supposed genius of being a businessman. He totally screwed it up.
And I don't. We should not overstate how much foreign leaders liked Donald Trump to begin with, right? He was not a particularly popular person, except with the sort of despotic leaders like, the leader of North Korea, the leader of Hungary, Orban, and of course Kim Jong-un. So I think that we don't want to say that he's ruined every bit of capital he had with these people. But what he's done is dug us deeper because the country is now suffering, as Jim said, and that's a little different than Trump's ego suffering or Trump's popularity suffering. And now when the actual people on the ground who are buying either nail polish or Tupperware or clothing are suffering because of what this president is doing simply on a whim, it's really kind of crazy.
Yeah, in addition to how the rest of the world feels, there was a study released this morning out of the University of Michigan's authoritative survey showing that consumer confidence is way, way down. Consumer sentiment fell nearly 11% from March to April and 34% down from this same time last year.
Yeah,
So,
that's not an outlier either. That
Yeah.
Michigan Consumer Index uh, survey is done every month and is an important um, monitor of what the economy is doing. And Wall Street watches that, and certainly the politicians watch that. And if consumer confidence is way down, as they say, that's not good for the economy.
It's
well, wasn't
always been one of Jim's favorite indices.
indicators? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the Michigan. Yeah.
Wasn't it consumer confidence that influenced the outcome of the election and got us Trump anyway? Wasn't it everyone so concerned about the economy and prices at the grocery store? And now we're looking at this consumer confidence index dropping like someone dropped a bowling ball on top of it. So does that mean that midterm elections are going to be different? Because we've clearly not gotten what was promised when it comes to prices going down.
Well, there's still a long way away, Kim. The midterms. I think that sentiment is building against Trump, and his popularity ratings and polls are dropping. But you know, he can turn it around. You know that it's too soon to say about midterms. But the Democrats, not so much the politicians, but the grassroots folks. There are huge demonstrations going on, across protests going around the country, the that have been going on in the last week or so. And one of the places you can see that is every night. Rachel Maddow highlights which cities around the country are protesting. In my little city of Oceanside, California, big protest here last Saturday. So
Yeah.
it's happening all over, but more of a grassroots thing. And so, yes, I think there is a big threat to him from the general public.
And the midterm elections are a different animal anyway. So issues, yes, Kim, what you're saying is right, but there's something different about the type of voter who votes in a midterm election, and it's not the typical MAGA figure. It's not someone who's coming out if Trump is not on the ballot, as we've seen in special and midterm elections in the past. So, yeah, these issues of how much eggs cost and how much tariffs may affect it, Jim's right. We can't predict what that's going to be like a year and a half from now. But what we can predict is that the Republicans tend to have to do more work in these midterms if they're the party party in power. Party out of power usually does better in a midterm election anyway, and he's proven that his voters don't show up when he's not on the ballot, and that will be a problem, notwithstanding what happens with all of these financial issues that are going on right now. Another thing to point out is, a lot of the arguments being made by Trump and his people, which is why I think some of these tariffs were at least paused or suspended, is that it would create manufacturing in the United States. Well, as soon as this happens, what do the businesses that buy so much from China do? They look at other countries and say, well, can we get this for less from Vietnam now that those have been suspended? Can we go to Peru and South America for some of these items for manufacturing? So it's not like they're saying, hey, let's build a factory here, which is what the America Firsters and the Trump people want you to think is going to happen. No, the people that are buying these materials, materials that go into things that maybe are made here, where they buy parts and implements for the production here from China, those are being sourced elsewhere. They're not. It's not like they're building a factory in Smyrna, Illinois, right now.
No, as you mentioned, building these factories, the next thing that Trump wants to tariffies is pharmaceuticals. And so he wants the pharmaceuticals to be manufactured within the United States, which is a great goal, except it takes a while to get that set up. So what happens between the time he puts the tariffs on to the time the meds are actually made in the United States, which I would think they have to pay more to make them here because you have to pay American workers more than you have to pay workers in other countries. Does that send the price of medication skyrocketing for people that are already having tough choices about whether to pay their rent or buy their meds?
Well, it has people in India making those medications at a faster clip than they were maybe even a month ago. And yeah, while it's a noble idea, and yeah, let's build it here. The fact of the matter is that these corporations and these bigger companies that do that don't want to spend the money on it, and that
Mhm.
costs more money to do it here, even if you were able to build that factory. Immediately, they start looking at other countries. Immediately, you read about the relief that so many of these company owners and CEOs are feeling once the tariffs have been lowered on or suspended on other countries. That, oh, now we can go to Japan. Now we can go to Vietnam and Cambodia and Singapore and try and source some of these items. So it is disingenuous to think this is about building factories in the United States.
One of the things that the members of the Trump administration are spending a lot of time doing is kissing Trump's rear end. We've watched Treasury Secretary Bessent tap dancing all over this tariff thing, but also it looks like if you don't get in line, if you don't offer the right kind of love to Trump, you get fired. We just saw the leader of the Space Force base in Greenland replaced because she dared to criticize Vance and his comments on Greenland and on Denmark. And so I just find it interesting that there was a cabinet meeting yesterday where much of the discussion centered on how great President Trump is and how amazing everything he's doing is. And I wonder how much time could be spent doing actual work versus kissing his backside.
Yeah, I mean, he demands this loyalty and this, you know, fealty that from anybody, and we
Mhm.
saw what happened with the poor with Zelensky in the Oval Office when he didn't kiss his ring right away.
Right.
He got his country uh, abandoned by the United States for because he didn't say thank you. That those type of things. It's part of the Trump ridiculousness. The more important stuff, Kim, is what's going on now in the courts with the
Mhm.
deportation.
Yes.
This guy who was deported to El Salvador, and then Supreme Court actually comes out surprisingly and
Mhm.
sides with him and says the United States government, the Justice Department, must quote facilitate his release, leaving some gray area there. And then today, the Justice Department goes back in and says, wait, we're not going to do that. We're not going to give you the details of we're going to facilitate that. They've missed two deadlines today in direct defiance of not just a federal court, but of the Supreme Court. And they're setting up uh, a real, we keep hearing this business of a constitutional crisis, but this is real. I mean, the Supreme Court has ordered them to get this guy back and to get out, and they're claiming, well, he's in a foreign country and it's El Salvador and we can't tell him what to do. Well, we
Mhm.
gave him $6 million to tell him what to do. You can tell him what to do, and it's going to
Well,
be interesting to see how the Supreme Court handles the fact that they're not doing what they were told to do.
what's interesting as well on this case is that El Salvador, there was an exclusive report on CNN. They say El Salvador says that it's been sharing gang intelligence with the United States, is working directly with the United States, requesting exactly which people here that they would like deported back to El Salvador. So if we as a country are working so closely with El Salvador, how hard is it to pick up the phone and say, "Oops, we sent this guy on accident. Can you send him back?" Michael,
Yeah,
sure. Why was it taking so long to get that done?
Mr. Art of the Deal evidently
Yeah.
made a bad deal with El Salvador. It was one way. We can send them to you, but we can't get them back. Um,
But and deference to someone who is similar to Orban in his dictatorial ways, and that's Bukele in El Salvador. So he picks his friends because he knows that they will do what he says because they are like-minded in the way they want to rule. So what does this say? That they're giving sort of carte blanche to El Salvador in this, but they're ignoring what the United States Supreme Court, one that he had a big hand in building, is saying on these things. So
It was
he
a
looks,
unanimous decision.
yeah,
Even
exactly.
his people went. His
No,
right
no,
wing
even
people
his
went for it.
people, right? No, no, I'm saying, but
Yeah,
but what's he doing? He's listening to Bukele in El Salvador and what's coming out of the government in San Salvador there before he's listening to what the Supreme Court has to say on this. The excuse they're giving is this ruling came so quickly that we need time to facilitate this. Well, I don't know. I mean, that's one thing, and it could be true, but there's no reason to believe the things that come from the lips of the people speaking on behalf of this president.
Trump has
well,
actually said we don't want this guy back. That's what he said.
Yeah,
but what is interesting is yes, the Justice Department is saying they need more time, as Michael says, uh, not to bring him back. I mean, the judge today didn't say bring him back today or right now. What the judge said is, tell me what you're doing to get him back. That's not a very high bar for the Justice
Mm-mm.
Department. And for them to refuse to do that is really uh, against the Constitution. And
yeah,
what
that's a
I
great
hope
point.
this
That's a
judge
great point.
does is pull one of those Department of Justice people into her court and ask him those questions, ask him or her those questions directly. And if they don't answer, it's the Huskow.
Yeah.
That's what would happen to you or me if we refuse to answer a judge's question.
Well, this man was, by the way, in the United States legally. He had every right to be here.
Yeah.
So, but speaking of the border, ICE posted something that has me very, very concerned. They say now it was a mistake. They shouldn't have posted this, but here's what they said. They said they are working to enforce federal laws to prevent the following from crossing the border illegally: people, money, products, and ideas. Ideas? Wait a minute. What do you mean? You mean like the ideas that Mahmoud Khalil had that is getting him deported? What ideas? You don't want ideas to come into the United States? Am I freaking out for no reason, you guys? Because it seems like ideas are something in America to be protected. We're able to talk about our ideas, to speak our mind. And now at the border, they're trying to keep ideas out. There's idea police going on.
Well,
Well,
I mean,
go ahead, Mark.
that's America first
Hmm.
to the hilt, right? I mean, the America firsters that only ideas that come here, unless it's an idea that a leader of a Central American country thinks is better than the one that your courts think. So, protection of ideas, is it intellectual property? Is it the value placed on that monetarily and otherwise? I don't know, and but just the mere fact that they're saying these things is isolationism and protectionism taken to a different degree than I've ever seen it before.
Yeah, even Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, has tried to justify the deportations of these people because they had ideas and
Right.
they spoke about them and they said they spoke out against American policy as far as Palestine is concerned. And so what he did is say, if you are going to if you're here on a green card. Now, a green card is one step away from citizenship. My grandparents were on green cards their entire lives. They never actually went and got citizenship. They worked and lived here, bought houses, paid taxes,
Hmm.
all on a green card. And now, if you have a green card, you cannot, if you're here on a green card, you can't speak out against
No.
an American policy.
Yeah,
That, you know, that,
this is why I want to send Avila to El Salvador.
Well,
the,
here's the
the
here, go ahead.
Marco Rubio has totally lost his spine. He is
But that presumes a spine. I mean, that
yeah,
presumes there was one before
he is so
that he had
lining
one.
himself up for MAGA support for the next
Yeah.
presidential race, and also to keep his Secretary of State. We know that the last Secretary of State under Trump lost his job because he objected to some of the things Trump wanted to do. Marco Rubio is just sitting there and slinking down and letting Trump do whatever he does and run right over him.
We're
Yeah,
in extremely dicey territory when you talk about ideas and policing ideas at the border, because who decides the ideas that we want to let in? Who decides what ideas are okay and what ideas are not okay?
The
And
dictator
we go
Donald Trump decides.
straight down a slippery slope with this.
Yeah,
I,
the dictator decides.
Yeah.
Exactly, and to have expectations of the people with whom Trump surrounds himself, especially in this second term, I think is a mistake, because even though Marco Rubio was approved 99 to nothing by his Senate colleagues to be Secretary of State, what Jim said is absolutely right. There are other ambitions, and I just argue with Jim because I don't think he had a spine when he showed up in the United States Senate. I mean, he's been a man about ambition the whole time. There's nothing wrong with ambition, but to kowtow at every turn just because of ambition is very dangerous in politics, and it doesn't prove terribly successful in the long run for a lot of these people. I don't think that the MAGA people, the people that will be electing or nominating the next candidate for the presidency, whether MAGA helps or not in 2028 is we don't know yet. But I don't think MAGA will help Marco Rubio. I think he's barking up the wrong tree.
We'll switch gears because I saw a story today that the Department of the Interior is now releasing an analysis of fuel deposits, fossil fuel deposits, that show another 1.30 billion barrels of oil in the Gulf of Mexico's outer continental shelf. So here comes more drilling in the Gulf of Mexico, also known as the Gulf of America, I guess. They say
Well,
the
once
new
there's
data
more drilling, it will be. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. They say the new data confirms what we've known all along, that America is sitting on a treasure trove of energy and we are unlocking it. This from Interior Secretary Doug Burgum in a statement yesterday. So they're going to ramp up oil and gas drilling in coastal areas in the Gulf of Mexico. I guess we should have seen this coming, yes?
Well, we
Whichever
see.
one of you
Here's the
wants to take
thing
it.
with this, Kim.
Yeah.
We focus on these day-to-day things, which are hard to ignore. Whether it's immigration or the prices of eggs, we're focused on that. Issue, the real issue is climate change. He is destroying this earth. He wants coal back up. He's allowing oil in. He's going to punish California if we don't allow more drilling rigs off of our coast. Donald Trump is going to be personally responsible for the destruction of our Earth, and it's not going to hurt me or you. Maybe Kim, who's younger than us, but it's going to hurt our kids and our grandkids. It is really something, and it's really dangerous, and it's something that we need to really focus on. And the next candidate for the Democratic Party needs to make that a main issue. He's destroying the Earth.
So,
Further to what Jim is saying, it goes under the red hat of MAGA, which is the notion that making America great again. I asked so many people who I've talked to what that means to them, and it is going back to a time when there weren't regulations. Well, we have regulations now because of that time when there weren't regulations, and the climate regulations we have learned the hard way. We are in desperate need of, and so yes, was there a time when you could drill in unregulated ways offshore in the United States from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific coast to the Atlantic coast to the to basins around the Virgin Islands even and Puerto Rico, the deep trenches there. There's been so much that we have learned that just saying make America great again and going back to a great time when we could just be kind of cavalierly drilling, that's not what America wants, and that's certainly not what the earth wants from America. And that's part of the problem, is the ideology that kind of informs every single, Jim said not to focus on the day to day, which is correct because this is about the macro. But when you see the day to day, this ideology informs that day to day in whatever realm you're looking at in this country, whether it's about race, whether it's about immigration, which I think are the same issue, whether it's about economics, protectionism, military, and now, of course, drilling, which equals climate. It's all the same.
Let me just point out, I'm older than both of you. When I was growing up in Los Angeles, in the San Gabriel Valley, in the late 50s and 60s, there were days when we had to cancel Little League practice because you couldn't breathe.
Oh,
These regulations, I mean, now you look outside and it's clear. You know, even in Los Angeles, the air is pretty clear. And that's because of regulation, is because of tailpipe and factories that have been told can't use coal anymore. And he wants to bring that back to a point. I can remember my lungs hurting as a kid. Don't do this. This is crazy.
to the last story I present to you both today. We talked a little earlier on the show about Elon Musk, and there is a bunch of Democrats sending a letter to the White House reminding them that he has only got 130 days and then he's got to get out. But now today we have a new announcement. The Social Security Administration says today that going forward, its communication will be relying solely on X, or formerly Twitter, right? Instead of traditional press releases or memos that are posted to the agency's website, they will only be using X to communicate to the press and the public. That is it. It'll become, they say, their communication mechanism. So there it is. I mean, it seems like even if Trump does only work for 130 days, or if his position with Doge slowly sinks away, his tentacles are all over the US government, and I don't know how we get rid of that.
I just hope this. They just need to answer the phone. The Social Security Administration
They're not
uh,
answering.
has already
No.
messed up by not answering the phone, and they wanted people to go on their computers to connect. You know, these are old people. You know, the Social Security folks are old people, and they don't necessarily aren't that computer savvy in many cases, and so they're stuck. So this Doge business of not answering the phone, using Twitter or X or whatever it is, uh, is not connecting with you know, these are not 20 somethings that are on Social Security. For the most part, these are older folks, and they're older Trump voters, and he's pissing them off,
Yeah.
which is not smart.
Yeah, and it's really true. It's who's your audience. Your Social Security audience is not necessarily the one that is savvy about X. And of all of the communications, first of all, X communication, I think a bad thing, right? The that all these people are expected to get any updates from the Social Security Administration on X, on social media, when many of them have no facility with it at all. It's absurd. Not only is it absurd, it's gonna be something that members of Congress are going to be hearing about, and the people they're hearing about it from, as Jim correctly states, are not. It's not about party. They're going to be hearing from older people who just have no way of getting in touch with the Social Security Administration, who are missing a check, whose checks didn't come to the right place, whose checks were less than they ought to have been. All the normal customer service and customer relations calls that the SSA has gotten for so long. So this is wildly irresponsible, and I can't imagine that Congress won't step in once their phones continue to ring, because you can reach a congressman and a congresswoman still by phone.
Hi,
We
it's
have come
Mark,
to,
and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell, you'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.